Welcome to SHOWstudio. It's our last roundup panel discussion of the season. We're going to be talking about the Paris shows. It's always quite difficult to kind of round up the Paris shows because it's such a diverse city in terms of fashion. You've got like the mega brands, you know, your Chanel's, Dior's, Vuittons, but then you've also got kind of the guys who've been around for a while but kind of do their own thing, people like Rick Owens. But now you've also got this interesting wave of kind of new talent, which I think was not something perhaps that we thought of as something that was happening in Paris, but you have, you know, Vetements is the obvious example, and obviously Demna at Balenciaga was a huge amount of buzz, but you also have like Julian Desena at Paco Rabanne, so there's a lot of kind of new blood, interesting times. I think this was a strange season in general. We've talked about this on every roundup, kind of because of all the see now, buy now, all these changes. And particularly in Paris, I think the kind of sense of fashion in crisis, to use a nice cliche of the season, was really prominent because obviously both Dior and Laurent at that point didn't have a creative director. So it felt like a really sort of strange season where fashion didn't know if it was coming or going. But before we kind of dive into all of that, I will let my fabulous set of women introduce themselves, starting with you, Lucy.
Hello, my name's Lucy. I'm Norris, and I'm a writer, historian, and consultant.
I'm Mandi, Lennard, and I'm the founder of Mandi's Basement.
My name's Reba, Maybury, and I am a writer, publisher, and lecturer.
Hello, everyone. So I made a lot of points there, and does everyone agree? Do they think it's kind of felt like a strange time to sort of see the Paris shows? Like I think it was the New York Times that wrote the piece that said, you know, the thing tying the season together is a season without kind of creative directors. So in a way, it's a season without the same focus they would perhaps usually have. Did you feel that, Lucy, when you were at some of the shows?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely like, I guess, because Milan had felt so exciting and exuberant and re-energised, there was this sort of like slight anticipation of what Paris might be. But actually, once we got there, it was just kind of felt okay. And I mean, Dior very much just extended the vision that I feel like Raf Simons very much sort of started, and the team did a really good job of extending that. So weirdly enough, that didn't really feel too diabolical. Lanvin, more so. I think it. There was a lot of people saying, oh, you know, it's going to be really weird, but actually it was certainly. You know, like I said yesterday, I think it's just testament to how powerful the designer is now as opposed to these houses, and I just think it's great to sort of see that without these incredible creatives that you know, these houses, they are, what do? You know, you have these sort of temporary teams in place, and they're not, you know, equipped for the immediate. So kind of strange, but there was sort of lots going on. I think Courage, the guys there, and Julien at Paco, like Dries and Margiela. So it started up. I think Margiela and Dries really sort of brought this. We'd seen so much of this kind of new take on glamour at Milan,
Gucci,
and Gucci, etc., and Marni even, and this romance that I thought, oh, wonder how like Paris is going to match this. But actually, I felt that those two shows up front, Dries and Margiela, really, really were like, okay.
Yeah.
Actually, they showed how they could do it, and I think John really sort of staked his claim on all things sort of mishmash, and you know, Margiela was just a theme that was running through the entire season everywhere. So he kind of sort of.
It's strange because it's not his Margiela; it's like Martin Margiela.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think both of them, John being a huge influence on what's going on at Gucci right now, and Margiela being an influence so. At Vetements and everywhere, it was really great. It was like a bit of a double whammy. Sort of John sort of like pow. Basically, it's myself and Martin that's kind of responsible for a lot of what's going on right now.
That's interesting. What was your take on Paris Fashion Week, Reba? Because I want to ask your opinion, because you're always very sort of candid and honest about sort of like about how things are and the state of affairs, and obviously that's kind of fashion. It felt like it was kind of ignoring these like. There were so many elephants in the room for the last few seasons. Like, there's too many clothes, there's too many shows, like, this isn't selling. And it felt like kind of actually fashion's finally having to, like, face up to that.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think, you know, my opinion of fashion's quite particular in comparison to a lot of other people in fashion because, I mean, I write a lot about fashion. I get paid to do it. I teach fashion at St. Martin's, but my main interests are about sexuality and politics mainly. So I think my point of view, fashion comes straightly behind like the politics behind what the fashion designer's doing, or the sexuality, or how they're projecting an idea of gender. And I feel like, Paris is inherently traditional, and there's a lot of the boring stereotypes that are still existing. Then there's also kind of a new breed of designer that's coming out there, but then still reinforcing something really conservative, and it's really disappointing. But I mean, I'm sure when we start looking at designers, we'll pick up on those points. But I think, fashion is changing because capitalism is in this very interesting stage at the moment, which is reflected in fashion. People are making too many clothes. The celebrity aspect that's been coming into a lot of collections is really quite vulgar in some ways. And, I think, fashion's kind of falling apart in this way that you were kind of discussing, and the fact that, there haven't been creative directors for some of them, but it's just that kind of brings to surface the dissection of just how many fashion houses are corporations, and maybe they're not that creative necessarily.
Absolutely, they're nothing without the designers.
Yeah.
They're just brands, and I think everyone talks now about fashion's about a brand, and actually it's not. There's a difference between being a design house and being a brand. And we were chatting yesterday about London. Everyone's saying, Burberry's changing things. The day I look to Burberry to change anything in fashion, I won't be in the industry. They're not influential as a design house. He's the CEO as well. It's a brand, and I think that Reba's right. Like I said, you look at Dior and you look at Lanvin without Arbor Baz or Raf, and you're reminded that it's all slightly like you said, ghostly and weird and chilly, because actually it's all a smoke and mirrors delusion type
definitely
thing.
What's your take on it all, Mandi?
Well, just going from what you were saying, I felt that with Celine. Every look came out with a bag. It was just weird, and the pointy shoes, and you kind of feel that, don't you?
Definitely. There is, it feels like this a very sort of producty time, and I just find it strange at the moment, because I just think, I think I was really jaded this fashion week. Like, some of my peers were like, Jesus Christ, like, because I was just really like, it's all pointless, I hate it all, like, not great. But I think it's just like, it's so hard to get excited about stuff, because I look at things, I'm like, who is this for? Where is this going? And like, just feels like too much stuff. And I was really aware this season, like, not just too many shows, but also like too many commentators, too much social media, too many Instagram. It just all felt exhausting.
Well, it's just an overload of information from
and
every direction.
None of it's actually got an opinion, because so many of the magazines are funded by advertisers. Just like, first look, and we love this, and it's just like, it's like everyone's kind of
you
dead
like walking
inside.
out of shows and people are freaking out because they're like, we have to Instagram, that's an advertiser, and then they'll be like, first look at Ferragamo.
Some of the magazines have to show their photos to their editors back in New York or wherever before they're allowed to post their Instagram, which is supposed to be an immediate.
Yeah, but you have that. You see people taking pictures at the shows and having to, as you say, send them to the office, so that you're always like, why are you at the show? And they're like, just for social, I just have to take an Instagram.
Some of them are there just to take pictures backstage as well.
Yeah, it's a very strange time for it all, because it's that kind of culture that it's funny that all these fashion editors are getting on their high horse about see now, buy now, like, and what have you. But like, it's those editors and that climate that is to blame for that. It's that like pushing it out and out and out and out and out, that it got to a point where it felt like there was this real gap between what people would buy it, like, it just wasn't very user friendly, because the actual people who were buying the clothes were looking at all this stuff and going, well, I can't get this, who's this for, like, who are we speaking to? It's like shouting into a void. It's really
but I don't see much cultural context around it. There's clever ways of doing it. They're sort of appeasing to the masses. It's actually not that credible, a lot of what's being churned out.
Yeah,
because
definitely.
they just think, fodder. And actually it's there are ways that you can do things really quickly, but kind of at least observe something kind of interesting. It all just feels kind of quite lowbrow, homogenous, shop
Yeah.
type
So what
stuff.
what shows did impress us? What felt like it had credibility? It can be awkward if no one has any.
I'm going to be really, really predictable.
Yeah.
And say Vetements, Balenciaga, Saint Laurent. Those, and I love Miu Miu. Reba and I were just having a chat before about some of our favourite shows, and Reba pointed out that was one of her worst shows.
Yeah.
Miu Miu?
Yeah.
Why didn't you like it?
I just think the celebrity aspect's really vulgar.
Yeah.
And like so blatant that it's just like, it's so base that it just lacks any kind of intelligent thought, quite frankly.
Yeah.
And I think, Miu Miu's got like a great history about exaggerating and celebrating kind of eccentric women, and I think by putting these like archetypal walking billboards into it just dissolves what Miu Miu is about.
I mean, Katie was starting it
Katie
first,
Graham,
so there's a lot of that touch of her in there.
It was her girls, a bit like Antonio Lopez with Antonio's girls in the 80s. It was very much Katie's girls.
She lost
I think Miuccia Prada was very excited by these girls. She was like amazed by Anna Cleveland backstage, and it was very new for her, and I think she enjoyed being challenging like that.
Yeah,
I think that's what
it
Katie
is right
brought to
what
it.
Reba says though. It's not what you expect from Miu Miu. Like Miu Miu, you expect a certain kind of, as you put it really well, a kind of off-kilter woman.
Yeah, but Miu Miu is still brushing off this whole diffusion thing about it.
Yeah,
it's never been a diffusion. It's one of the few that's always been its own independent brand. It's showed in a different country and all this kind of thing. But I think this is almost like this is the new Miu Miu. This is the new agenda for them. And I thought that kind of, it came out as a really strong new departure, and also it matched the idea of the collection, which was very laissez-faire and just grab whatever you want to wear, and that juxtapositioned with the models, I thought was a very strong message.
Well, it didn't feel like Miu Miu's done collections that feel like an intellectual collection. I wouldn't say this particularly did. It felt like a very kind of. But then is this a sign of the times? What I think someone worked out that the combined Instagram following of all of the girls in that show was 87 million, and you just think like.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, it's product that's selling, and that show had some amazing pieces. Yeah. Lots of people that we know are really excited about getting denim bustle skirts from it. Yeah. The coats were so strong. I would say some of the best of the whole of Paris Fashion Week. Yeah. And also it was so brilliant. It was the last day of Paris Fashion Week, and there's this kind of false sense of relaxation that comes over everyone that goes to the shows. It's almost like the whole hustle and bustle. A lot of people have left Paris. The traffic isn't as bad, and you're all getting relaxed. You're all sick of fashion, so you go with this amazing attitude, but it's a really majestic day because you've got Vuitton in the morning, then you've got Miu Miu, and it kind of really matched that show because suddenly the models were just walking nonchalantly down the runway. It was quite a dark venue. It was all very just ease. It was quite special.
Do we think, because obviously it's interesting that you said celebrity, Reba, because do you think there is a difference between the supermodels of yore, if you think of the 80s, and the supermodels or celebrity models of now?
Yeah, and I think that the differentiation is very, very simple. I think if you look at the biggest supermodels, the biggest supermodels that come to mind when I think of women like Naomi Campbell or Kate Moss, if you dissect modelling down as a career, there's something inherently democratic about it. Yes, people hate on models because it's this adoration of a kind of impossible beauty, but actually anyone can be born from any corner of the world and become a model, and I think that's amazing. So the biggest supermodels like, I don't know, Yasmin Le Bon, Kate Moss, Naomi Campbell, all these women came from quite working class backgrounds, and that's that. But then you have like models who weren't. There is this form of democracy. But we're looking at the biggest supermodels now, like Cara Delevingne and Kendall Jenner. They're essentially just aristocrats, and through their connections to their family, they've been allowed to become that famous. And that's not saying they're not beautiful, but that's another sign of the times. And
I think like cultural reflection.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I think what was amazing for me was seeing the Chanel show. Yeah. I thought there was something really shocking about that because he pared it all back and took all the kind of big production values, and everyone was just front row on a gilt chair. And the models looked really frumpy. It was incredibly frumpy, and it was only when you got quite late in the show to Kendall Jenner that you suddenly appreciate what she brings to the equation at these shows, because suddenly it looks slightly youthful. Then later on there was Charlotte Free and Gigi, but Charlotte Free and Kendall, they were almost like the look that Cole wanted, but the way that they came out in this kind of tweed vest with pearls and denim, I was quite shocked at how frumpy that was.
There was a lot of lady spirit in Paris, I thought, but there was, and it was...
But then it works with someone like Julie Delibran with Sonia Rykiel, who's carving such... I mean, I haven't really heard much buzz about her from this Paris Fashion Week, but the collection was beautiful, and she had the confidence, because this was her fourth as the designer. So she's moved away from the
Sonia Rykiel was quite forgotten for a while.
Exactly. I think they're taking her for granted already, which is a testament to her confidence and what she's doing. And also, you were talking about a brand, and she's been able to go to Paris Beaux-Arts venue, a really grand venue this time. And it looked really beautiful and wearable, and it doesn't really matter about the commentators because that brand has got that customer and audience.
Yeah, it's interesting with those, just like where you have, but then you think if it was Sonia Rykiel, I remember one of their fashions, they put Lottie Moss in it. You know, they've also fleeted with those girls and that kind of way of showing. And I wonder, is there... I found it hard this season to think of people where it really felt like they were just doing things completely their own way. They weren't doing it the way of the fashion system. Like, that's why I always turn to someone like Rick Owens, because I feel like whether or not you like the aesthetic, it feels like tide will come, things will change, moods will occur, but he always exists outside of that. You know, he's not going to cast anyone that doesn't look like a Rick girl. He's not going to do... And I think that's really amazing, but there's less and less of that. Like, you know... It's a strange time. It feels like everything is becoming very homogenous. In a sense.
I mean, Anna Cleveland opening and closing Comme des Garçons was fresh. I thought. And one thing I will say for that Chanel show, I think it was Edie was second. And Mika Argonaras was first, and I think he closed with Andrea Harding, which is quite an intelligent choice. But yes, I mean, obviously at the Balenciaga show when Lotta opened, that was quite Vetements show. That was quite a powerful image, wasn't it? I mean, so that whole show just flooded Instagram like this massive tsunami.
What did everyone think of the? Sorry, I feel really bad for Lisa. Like racing from show to show. What did everyone think of the Vetements show? What did you think, Reba? Because I know you walked in a Vetements show, didn't you? I
walked in the first show, a year and a half ago, with my sister. And that was obviously the first show, so we had no idea what to expect. And I really liked Demna and I really liked Lotta, but I was really disappointed, not in the clothes that they made for this or Balenciaga, but the modelling. And I think like every single person I've spoken to, except for Mandi, has unanimously agreed that as much as they like the clothes of Vetements, their choice of casting is very, very irresponsible. And you know, a lot of people have said to me now when they see people wearing Vetements, they feel embarrassed. Like a lot of people own Vetements and don't actually want to wear it anymore because their fetishization of white beauty is horrible, to be completely frank with you. You know, and I think, you know, like the clothes are really intelligent. I really like the way Demna works, and I think what he's doing with the business is really interesting. But essentially the message they're bringing out with these clothes is that their perception of beauty is white. And I don't know, I think if you were to propose them with that question, I'd be really interested to see what they say.
I'm surprised that they haven't spoken out, because I feel like I was talking to a journalist and a designer about this last night, and we were saying, you know, what are they gonna do? Because they were like, you know, next season if they just whack a handful of black models into the shows, it's gonna look very embarrassing and very awkward.
When I did the first show, there was, I mean, me and my sister are mum's Pakistani, but you can't really tell. And I think there was another girl who was maybe, I think she was half Algerian, half North African. But then other than that, everyone was white. You know?
But their argument, or what people's argument, is that it's their tribe. I totally agree with you. I don't think there's any excuse for like these sort of kind of weird tribes anymore where we're just promoting one race over another. I mean, I try and hold back from this racial thing because otherwise I'd just be saying it in every single show review.
It's very
difficult. I think that, you know, sadly, I think, you know, at Gucci, for example, the two black girls that did walk were the coolest girls on the whole of the show. They actually look really amazing in the clothes.
But the first Gucci show, there wasn't a single black model, and I wrote about it in my review. No other journalist wrote about it.
And then people just take it for granted that's the reality. But the problem with Vetements is that people see them as the bastion of cool at the moment. People absolutely adore them, and if they are that cool, and so many people want to be associated with them, if they're, you know, and they're attracting a completely new audience in fashion. You know, they're not attracting the girls who want to wear Vuitton or Gucci. It's like it has this essence of subculture to it.
Yeah, but has it really though?
But it hasn't really, because a lot of the references to clothes, you know, like a lot of the references to clothes draw on the clothing of people from black culture,
absolutely,
African American culture, and working class culture. You know, having a jacket that says security on the back. Who are the people who are actually security guards? What is their background?
Did you guys see the head of DHL wore their DHL t-shirt? No lie. Yes.
But you know, like, I mean, I think it's actually quite grotesque, like playing on this.
Well, I'm like the new Valentino ad campaign. It keeps coming up on style.com, and I'm like, how can I freeze this? It's like, you know, white women in the plains of Africa with cornrows. They've extended that out, and they still haven't cast one black model in the campaign. I think Balmain is obviously one collection that does have more of a multiracial representation.
But that was really weird when Linnaeus came down the catwalk. She's got like a short afro, and she came down the catwalk in this kind of long dark wig. That kind of was a bit weird.
They totally like, again.
The hair swap though is very business focused. Like Business of Fashion did a thing on this, but the hair swap is because they have a licensing called like Balmain Couture hair.
Oh, they do that weird licensing.
Yeah, it's a weird licensing thing. Which is
they
all
do
like
these
extensions.
products and
but they're obviously going to try and bring that in a huge way. Like, there's so much money in fake hair at the moment.
Of course
like, think
is.
of like all those Towie girls who like have made huge.
But
money.
the hair industry is horrific.
Yeah, but like I think fashion has never exploited that. They've never made fashionable, cool hair products. Your hair is like, if you think every hair advert, it's like so cringe, awful, like looks unfashioned. So actually, there is.
Well, it's the Kardashianation.
The problem is that more often than not, it's a different brand. So, for example, Saint Laurent, the beauty is YSL Beauté.
Yeah.
So it's always. I did a Vivienne Westwood perfume launch once, and it wasn't Vivienne Westwood. It was the brand that did the perfume.
It's the same with Comme, everything. It's like these different.
So they can't control the image quite a lot of that.
Yeah, but I think this is a license, so that they would, in a way. I wonder if they're.
But again, but these hair products, like who wears acrylic hair more than anyone? Like people with kind of afro hair, all that kind of stuff.
It isn't the fake hair though, is it? I mean, those products that they do, they're actually like things that you leave in to make it look like you come out of the sea and stuff like that.
Oh, I thought
it's not
No,
fake
they
hair.
do lots of fake hair. They do wigs and fake hair as well. Yeah.
I mean, the distribution of those products is very wide. I mean, it's not particularly careful.
Yeah. I wonder if they're trying to somehow, like the Balmain obviously have a strategy.
I
I imagine it is.
Is
Do you
it?
think I don't know.
I don't know.
But can someone check that? Just Google like whether it is.
But I think that my point on this
I imagine it is real hair.
My point on this is though that they do have women of like slightly different sizes, different ethnicities, but then they have to make them again fake. So there's nothing real about even multiracial women. You've got to turn them into some sort of like glamazon or like the belts have got to be like metallic, this thick, with all this like Kardashian cartoonish idea of what it means to be glamorous.
But the show was a homage to Kim Kardashian.
Was it actually?
Kanye West was claiming that backstage after the show. Because it was all her colours and it was about. I mean, it was ironic that it was about curves and it was these skinny models.
Yeah.
But actually, what we're doing is kind of like. Objectifying black women, or non-white women as being women that really want to like glamour up and power up, like that's their only version of who they can be. We need to look at much more different kind of facets and different kinds of personas that exist within all races.
But then that's the problem, because the designers who do that in a really authentic way, like we were talking about this on the Milan panel, someone like Stella Jean, whose collections are all about, she's like half Haitian. She works with women in Africa. She has a very sustainable way of working. She's not seen as cool because she makes things that are like, it's often like full skirted things, or like it's very colourful. It's not like edgy and nonchalant, and it's not chilly. Yeah. Like it doesn't have that kind of. But then actually that is really amazing and is speaking to people who like grew up with those prints and think they're really beautiful and
it's
get
not
to see
appealing
them.
To a stereotype.
No, but I just think the problem is what we define as cool.
It's kind of interesting because you've got like.
It is human hair.
So you've got like public school, Hood by Air, Off-White. I would put Vetements like in that category, but like Reba says, Vetements, it's like for people that like really want to be cool, that were like never cool at school and now think they can get.
Also, I think don't you think Vetements is a bit like the. I feel like who was I having a conversation with? I think I was speaking to Claire about this the other day. Vetements is essentially normcore. Like all the clothing is just like very normal pieces of clothing.
Well, that's
the observations on what they're wearing.
Yeah, it's just like
Well, that's what it means. Vetements. It means clothes.
But like, is that exciting? Just like fit in, to like a white stereotype.
I actually think clothes, as opposed to fashion right now, ironically, is actually more interesting than fashion in a way. Because just making good, honest clothes, whether it be Hood by Air or whether it be public school, I think there's something really cool about the guys over there that are doing that. And I feel for me, they've got a lot more credibility than these guys. But actually, these guys are twisting it with this sort of in-crowd weird sort of. It's not.
I think
very
this season,
exclusive.
I feel bad for them because I feel like it was a big misstep.
I don't feel bad for them. I don't think they've even. I think they know what they're doing.
Do you think that?
I've worked with lots of designers and I've done the casting process. Yeah. And when you do a casting process, their casting is obviously like, we want this particular area.
Hang on a minute, you're talking about the models again. I thought that was a good collection, and I know that those shoulders, a lot of the ideas that it was challenging, it did have a lot of good elements.
I just can't.
I wouldn't say that was a bad
Vetements
show.
I don't think it was a bad Vetements. I do actually. I think it was a good collection. I think it was a bad show. Because I can't sit and look at a show
separate the two.
and separate
I can't
the
either.
two. And maybe I should be able to. Maybe that makes me a bad fashion writer.
Let's make the observation of, like, if you are black or you're Indian or you're Asian and you want to wear these clothes, how are you going to feel when the clothes are being presented only on white people?
Yeah. And it's just I don't get it.
Well, Kanye was there. It's kind of weird.
Well, Kanye's. That's another.
But anyway, coming back to the clothes, I thought it was interesting. I think there's quite a link with what Raf Simons is doing at the moment. You know, this all sort of like kind of all-American gothic kind of high school kid.
Yeah, the high school thing.
There's a real link between, like, again, what Raf's doing and what these guys are doing. It was certainly, it was in a church, it was really late at night, blah, 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 blah. They had, all the girls were they had some sort of incense over them, so every time they came out, and apparently they were, like, all being covered. And it was it was all supposed to feel quite cultish. Do you know what I mean? And
there were some occult elements towards the end of the show.
Yeah, well, that the bridges we burn and all this, all that kind of
black metal.
Absolutely. So but yeah, it is what it is. People are raving about it, and it's certainly I don't know. People are sort of somehow kind of they're forgetting about where this is all coming from in terms of who did this. This is essentially kind of a bricolage of a couple of major designers that have existed within fashion, but for young people that just don't really care about what happened before.
But it's not for young people though, because the prices are humongous.
Absolutely.
I think that's what I can't. I was talking to Nazir Massar yesterday. He did a talk that I'd organised, and he was saying how he feels really uncomfortable. And he started to feel really uncomfortable that he got to the point that he wanted to make cool clothes for his friends and for him and stuff that he loved. And he was like, and I've got to the point where I can't even afford my own clothes. And he was like, I just can't get my head around that. And that's what I don't quite get with a lot of young brands, actually, where it's like, especially ones that talk about being inspired by their friends and the lives they lead. And because who... I'm sure who are their friends who could afford an £800 pair of jeans?
So price per wear, you were chatting about this because I saw your St Martin's panel, or LCF lot. What were they? I mean, they just
the student panel. We did a student panel when we did the Vetements,
and they're sort of just like devouring the imagery and thinking it encourages them to sort of make these guys. Are they making money? Obviously, older people are buying it and wishing that they were young again. It's that nostalgia.
But that's
thing.
the Saint Laurent model as well.
Absolutely, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
I think what you're saying could apply to so many of the shows that we're seeing, though.
Oh, definitely,
with the whole thing of streetwear crossing over into luxury designer wear and how we dress now. So I don't think Vetements can be accused of that. I think there's a lot of new ideas in that show. And you're saying, how can anyone afford this sweatshirt? Well, you could say that about any of these shows we're looking at.
I think it's different with them. I'm not bashing them.
The reason we're having this conversation is that they're a victim of their own success.
Yes, 100%. I think that is part of the. I'm not saying that their prices are kind of like astronomical compared to. They're the same as you say.
But I feel there's a different consumer who are interested in them who aren't necessarily usually interested in buying fashion.
Exactly, I think that's
the thing.
But you know what?
I think
which is great.
They're inspiring people to do it yourself.
Yeah, they are.
They're inspiring people to wear their clothes in a certain way, to buy the jeans and fray them. And at the end of the day, if you speak to Demna and his brother, they'll be thrilled about that. Every designer wants people to be inspired by what they're putting out.
Yeah, definitely. And I do think it was time for something new to come into Paris. And you're right, you see kids who've ripped up their jeans at the bottom who are wearing massive hoodies and all of that.
But Margiela was doing that in the mid, it's like ripping the jeans until near oblivion. I think it's really interesting because obviously he's got a background that. He's a brand guy that's basically, it's like a pseudo directional house. It's actually a brand. It's really interesting.
But then I think
kind of
credit to them, they are honest about that in a way. He doesn't pretend that he has these lofty concepts. He called it Vetements because it's about clothes.
But almost
he's amazingly candid in interviews as well. I think amazing things come out, about the way that he considers every item, every piece. I just think he's shaken up the whole thing, and now because it is so far ahead of a lot of the stuff that people want to buy. of course people are starting to kind of attack it or get Vetements fatigue because that's all they're all talking about. I mean, that window in Colette at Paris Fashion Week was just a rack of messy clothes.
Yeah.
And that was the Vetements. It was almost like the first window they've ever done. I mean, obviously they've arranged it for ages and made it look like that, but it was just hilarious that was. And it has got that hint of Emperor's New Clothes about it for that reason. Yeah. So when you go into the new Dover Street Market in Haymarket, the Vetements, it's really funny there because it's kind of on the top, one of the top floors towards the back, but it actually looks like it's in the fitting rooms and you're not sure you should go in there. Yeah. And I think that's a whole play on what we're talking about as well. Yeah. You're not sure whether that's the collection to look at or whether that's the stock room.
Yeah.
And they're doing this, but I think all that kind of like, is this serious? This apathetic, like, are we in fact? It is the highbrow concept actually.
Well, I think we were talking about this. I think
weirdly
on another panel. I'm probably repeating myself, but I think what I find quite troublesome, and it's always really underpinned fashion editorials, collections, is this connection between being cool and being apathetic. Because I think what needs to be seen as cool is being engaged and being active and being political and being
but it's
aware
not,
and also being caring about things and being committed to things, whereas fashion has always kind of fetishized being nonchalant and apathetic, and that worries me a little bit.
Yeah, like sustainability being cool, and everyone's like, ooh, it's just so not. And I actually really want to make sustainability cool.
I just think it's nothing's cool that you're like
shown to share.
If you're really into something,
well, people are scared of having opinions.
Yeah.
But actually, in terms of, I think what they did at Balenciaga was really good though.
In terms of the clothes?
Yeah, I thought it was really good. No, I thought that, no, I'm just being totally honest. I'm not going to be like, oh, I hate everything that they do because of my
I don't hate everything they do
I'm just saying
I think Lotta is a really brilliant stylist.
What I'm saying, what I think they did in terms of the cutting and the reflection of the Balenciaga codes, melding it with their own world, I've got the integrity to actually be honest about the fact that I think that actually this was a good collection for Balenciaga. Because this felt like design.
Yeah. What do you think, Reba?
It's like a posher version of what they do.
I think, that idea of playing on Balenciaga's history is
that very
worked,
clever.
And I think that was very clever.
Yeah,
and that
they
was
did
done
really
very well. I think some of it does look a bit like your mum picking you up from school in the 90s. But that's all right. I think that's what I'm going to say about it.
Yeah.
Wearing a bit of Marks and Spencer's.
I didn't actually think it looked clever. I thought it looked very easy for him. I think this was an easy season for him. Yeah. I think that's what he's going to be doing, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it was a great starting point, and thank goodness he didn't amp it up more than that, because then there would have been terrible hype about it.
Yeah. I think that's maybe why people have kind of turned on them a bit, because it felt so authentically them. Like, it didn't feel like they tried to do this big concept. It felt like they were just doing exactly what they think is cool, exactly what they're about. I think that's maybe why people did kind of get a bit, whoa, because they were so confronted by what Vetements stands for, and it was so associated with this kind of white beauty that people were a bit like, oh, okay, so that's what you are, that's what you're about, that's we didn't quite know that. So I think that's maybe where the fatigue has come from. But then it's a learning curve. They're young people as well, and I'm not saying that
I always thought it was a dodgy, what's it called, appointment.
I think it's a good appointment. I just think, I wonder, like,
I thought it was a very brave appointment.
I think it's a really good appointment.
And he's obviously he is very interested in Balenciaga and the codes of the house, and some of those are very evident there. I don't think it looks like it is obviously a permutation of Vetements, but it is so clearly Balenciaga. I wouldn't accuse him of just doing what he does at all.
No, I agree. But I think my issue also is that, like, when I try and kind of say, like, they're young, blah blah blah, my biggest problem with this, I think the real, like, sort of annoyance with the casting came when they did a Balenciaga show that was also all white.
Yeah.
And
because Vetements have always done that.
Exactly, and no, I think it was that double whammy. And what I think is, like, and I have such little faith in brands looking after their designers. Like, he wasn't head of a big brand before. Like, he's never done casting for a big brand. Why the hell were Balenciaga not like, no, sorry? Like, that's what I find really weird. Why weren't they like?
But I will say that you are going on and on and on about the casting and the not being minority or black in the show, which is an entirely valid point, and I completely agree. But at the end of the day, that is a great collection.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying, put that aside for a second, and if we
Well,
focus
absolutely.
on that,
I mean,
you know,
that's what I was saying. The clothes are great.
Yeah. Who else should we talk about?
Saint Laurent.
Saint Laurent, did you love it?
I completely loved it.
Did you?
I thought it was great. The models were incredibly skinny, and I thought that was quite offensive.
Yeah.
But the collection I thought was incredible, and I thought that last look, I think it's Lily Sumner in the red fur, was almost like could have been a farewell outfit.
Yeah. Do you think it was a farewell outfit? Rumours are flying that
it looks like a goodbye kiss, doesn't it?
Yeah, that he's off to Dior.
Is that true?
It's a big rumour.
Oh yeah.
It makes sense. Make them some money.
Yeah.
And the gold dress that obviously Lady Gaga was wearing for her 30th birthday the other night. But that I thought that was really fabulous.
Yeah.
It was a great crescendo farewell.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then obviously the other rumours that Anthony Vaccarelli's going to go here.
Yeah.
Which
I don't know, these rumours change all the time. All through the men's where people were saying that Eddie was going to Saint Laurent and was going to Dior, and that's why he'd moved the show to LA, and then obviously this show happened. So I just think no one knows. What do you think?
I think that it's really funny because people forget that when it's the fashion season, it's one of the few times that you all see each other. All the buyers and all the press. And in Milan, it's very much about the deals, the advertising. The advertising deals go down.
More business,
Milan is real business. Obviously, it's a bit more fun than it used to be now. But Paris is where all the magazine stories are conceived.
Yeah.
Just going to a couple of shows that I did in Paris, I could hear these dialogues with these magazine figureheads going down at such a voracious rate, and it's this pressure that they have to get in there now. It's not like once they get back and their ideas settle, they thought, oh, I know who would be good. It was almost like it's all going on there, what they're going to be doing in their magazine for the next 6 months.
It's insane, the pace though, and that kind of like, it's like 1 week it's this, 1 week it's that. No one has time, no one has any, and I think that's only going to get worse because of this pressure.
But the time management of the industry is so brutal. It's really shocking. You know, we see it in London now, where when the show's finished, you go backstage to interview a designer, and suddenly they're shooting their lookbook already.
I know.
That's happening more and more and more now.
And people, like, you see it so much in Paris. What you were saying about the magazines is people shooting overnight. You see it loads in couture because obviously it's so hard to get hold of those clothes, where it's like, oh, you'll have the clothes between 3 a.m. and 4 a.m. and then like you're like whack up on the girl, take a picture. It's insane. You're staring intently at Saint Laurent, Reba.
I know. I don't know. I mean, some of it I like, but some of it I think is like the worst of the 80s.
Yeah.
I'm not. I mean, I've just never been down with it. I mean, I know Pierre Berger was there, and obviously, like, props to him. He's a, all time. He knows what he's talking about. He loves it, but still, I can't make myself
some of
love
it, isn't it?
Yeah.
But the girls are really too thin.
I just don't feel like it feels like he likes women. That's what I feel. Like, I just don't...
I don't think he likes himself, babes. Let's put it down to that. That's what it seems like to me.
It's like kind of got this anti-fashion stance again, hasn't it? It's a little bit of a sort of like, I speak to the young people that love Yves Saint Laurent, and they just love it because it doesn't feel like fashion, and they don't like to think of themselves as fashion people, but they think they're pretty rock and roll, so somehow that really appeals to that. So he's done a really good job of like basically just leaning on musical counterculture within music, and then basically just putting fashion in through the back door, but saying it's not fashion, but actually, just using music and basically just sourcing lots of great sort of muses and ideas out of young kind of bands and stuff.
But it doesn't feel young. I feel like it feels like a nostalgic idea.
Absolutely, but weirdly enough, that kind of, it is that sort of nostalgia. It's when younger people say to me, "Oh, the 90s are really big right now." I'm like, babes, they never went away. It's like you package up the 80s or the 90s, and people feel like there's a token of bad taste irony, but it's again that apathy, like who gives a fuck, like it's that sort of screwing with fashion in a kind of way. Put a biker jacket on, and all of a sudden like you're hot. It doesn't mean anything. It's like, oh, we don't care about fashion, we're just dressing up, we've got long legs and we look great, but we don't care about fashion.
That's why I was actually talking to Tim Blanks about this, and sorry, I'm jumping over to Milan, but he said that's why I love Gucci, because he was like, say what you want about the clothes or how it's like, the styling and how it's done. He was like it is so sincere, and he was like, there is not one jot of cynicism in those clothes, and he was like, cynicism is everywhere at the moment and it's killing fashion. I really actually agree with him. It's like I've realised I tend to like things when they look really sincere. That's what I was saying about Rick as well.
That's why I love Dries. Because I thought Dries was just, I mean, what a lovely man, makes beautiful things. It was so glamorous, but it was so heartfelt, and it was just like, this guy loves what he does. There wasn't
there's not that undertone of you know, like that energy,
but you know, there is a reverence in there and that kind of stuff, of course, you know, but I just thought it was such an incredible collection. The show
Dries has always just like done what he wants, so which is what I kind of like about Dries, is that kind of like sense of just working on your own timeline, and the way he wholesales and being very, you know, like everything that he shows he sells in his own stores, and being very like, it's hard to get. You
the
can't buy it
stockists really
online.
represent it very well, and it's almost like the editor's label, isn't it?
I really like that, and I
think he's really upped, like last season, do you remember he was doing all that like playful mishmashing, he was talking about engaging with bad taste, and it had a sort of feeling of new cheer about it. It does feel like what's going on in Milan, he's like upping it even more and going, do you know what, I'm going to have some fun with taste, and not but actually kind of making beautiful things and pushing kind of boundaries, and I like
it a lot, because I find I've never met a woman who wears Dries Van Noten that I don't find boring. Like, no, that I don't find...
It's an interesting...
Yeah, like everyone's always... Who I've met that wears it... I'm saying this really badly. Everyone I've always met that wears Dries Van Noten has been somehow interesting.
Yeah.
Like, they've been...
Had
an interesting job, or they've, like...
Which I thought that Loewe show was very like that.
That's interesting.
That was a real... You know, a more art proud feel. More than last season.
Yeah, definitely.
I couldn't believe it. It came out. It was so super sophisticated. I was like, who's this woman?
But then that fits, I think, with I guess also maybe it is differentiating between J.W. Anderson and Reba, and J.W. Anderson, like, there's always that art influence. You know, we were talking about this, how he's so interested in culture, and he, like, you know, like, he did that show at Kettle's Yard, like, he's very interested in kind of, like, everything from publishing through, it's, like, very much that world. But then there has to be that difference, and I think J.W. Anderson is for the kind of irreverent girl who's got interesting references, whereas this is perhaps for the authentic woman who is, you know, in the art world and buys
art. I think this is beautiful, and I think it's a really beautiful representation of women.
Yeah.
I think it's very elegant. You know, and it's clever. You know,
I think back in the day, the label. I mean, when I was working with Browns years ago, I was drawn to Comme des Garçons because Browns owned the Comme des Garçons store then, and I used to go there the odd day to help out, and then I became a buyer there.
Yeah.
But the customers struck me as very interesting.
Yeah, I love that.
And that's what got me into PR, actually, because I was amazed by their database. Like, they had an old cards in alphabetical order.
Yeah.
And because it was so quiet in the shop.
Yeah.
I used to just ring everybody up and say, just still want to be on this database, and it was just finding out these really interesting people.
Yeah. Which we forget a lot in fashion. We always forget about the actual eventual woman who buys those clothes, and I think often we like other her, like she's this like rich woman from some far off territory who kind of swans in and spends all this money. But actually, like, what I love with the labels where you can imagine that woman. Maybe she's an academic, maybe she's a doctor, maybe she's there. And I like those labels where you see the clothes as if they would have a real life, like, and there's someone who's wearing, which is that.
But I see that with this collection.
Definitely.
Yeah, which perhaps I think maybe I haven't with all the Loewe collections.
Not at all. I mean, the way that he bound, the waist was the skirts were full, and that kind of like real rough sort of kind of artisan fabrics.
Yeah.
But yet the little kind of caps,
I'm
which
obsessed.
actually I really love.
The prices,
I love it.
The prices of the Loewe are off the wall. I mean, it really is so expensive. But when you actually see it up close,
it's really lovely.
It's almost like those covetable pieces that people used to say that about. Well, when I was working in Gareth, people used to say about him. You know, it's almost like you'd buy this piece and you'd have it.
Yeah.
You know, it's almost like you're collecting it like you would art. But really, when you see the craft in making it.
Yeah.
But this had this sort of like ancient kind of relic feel about it. Even the cat.
Well, there are
like
always
something...
that kind of weird sun-kissed kind of tones that have become. You know, he does the like. Those browns and those kind of dusty, sandy shades.
Really, I think Spanish house.
Yeah, it's Spanish. Yeah, you think of that.
Yeah, but they've got a strength. You know, some of the collections in Paris, you know, were had that kind of palette, and they were just a bit dull.
Yeah, a bit like with them. There's it feels kind of like, it feels romantic, and you think of that kind of like, you know, Jamie Hawksworth's imagery is always kind of quite yellow, and it kind of it feels like a part of their kind of world. It doesn't just feel like, oh, here's some nice camel tones.
But the second, I think
you can tell this has got incredible references behind it.
Yeah.
The research they've done, you know, it's going to be stunning. And very cohesive.
Yeah.
I think it was the second to last look, where I think it was kind of like a tealy kind of blue. She walked out. This lady here. I mean, it doesn't come across too well in the photographs, but she walked out. I was like, oh my god, she looks loaded. Like, you know, when you're just like, I could see where she lives. I could see her traveling internationally, and it was just the line, but yet the thickness and this raw kind of like this woven fabric that was left like really, really chunky and thick. And I was just like, she walked through, and everyone was like, oh. Yeah. But a bit intimidated by her.
How often do you feel intimidated by a model at the shows? You're always just looking at them, hoping that they're not going to fall over.
Yeah, but not in a great way. I was happy
that's why it's brilliant. Like,
I think he wasn't he the one that had his ad campaign up during New York. Featuring pieces of this collection.
They did that, and then Paco Rabanne did that as well.
Just a few people did it, but I think that's a really...
It's really
good
cool.
doing that.
It's a lot of confidence.
The cat was everywhere.
Well, they always do that with the kind of where they'll have it all around the city when you go to the shows. Like, you know, in Paris at the Men's, it's like, it feels like Paris Fashion Week. It's also like Nueve Fashion Week, because they're up on all the phone booths and all the... and it's kind of great. I like that, because it feels like it is speaking to someone who's not just those journalists who are there. I
think it's something we don't get at London Fashion Week. You know, when the city celebrates fashion, you hardly ever feel that in London. I think you did that time when I think the mayor's office did that project with Elle, where they did the underground posters. That was brilliant. But it's something that's always lacking at London Fashion Week.
The only thing is, though, if you speak to the taxi drivers, they love London Fashion Week, and they know everything about it, because they make so much money. I always do that. I always ask, like...
They're like, when's the last day?
I think they know loads. They'll be like, so what day is Burberry on? And you're like...
They get their tip sheet.
It's amazing.
What's going on.
Do they? That's so funny.
Oh, they love it.
It's really, they're really funny. They're like, you look dressed up, you're going to the shows, and you're like, hello. I love it. It's really great. What else shall we talk about? There's lots of people we haven't talked about.
Paco Rabanne was really good.
Do you want to talk about Paco Rabanne?
Yeah, I thought it was really good. I'm so pleased for him. Julien just was like,
There's this weird little Nicolas Ghesquière mafia now.
There is.
Obviously, like, Marie-Emily Sauvé, who's kind of working with Julien Desena as well. Julien Desena used to work at Balenciaga. He's Nicolas Ghesquière's partner. So there's this really interesting...
Nicolas walked in and he was, like, super smiley. And then he turned around to me and he went, hey, how you doing? And I was like, hi. And I was like, yeah, I'm working with SHOWstudio. He's like, hey, I love SHOWstudio.
Do you know him? Oh my God, if he said hi to me, I would be like, what the fuck?
And I said to him, good luck for the show later on in the week. He's like, thanks so much. And I was like... oh my god, the sweetest person ever. That and Valerie Steele getting the bus with Valerie.
You're just like...
I was just like...
oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, it's a really good one. So, and then they all sat together, this like big giggly gang, and they absolutely, when the collection finished, was just going for it. Like so cheering. And I do think that last season, it did look very derivative of work that Nicolas had done, because obviously he's worked with him there at Balenciaga. There was a set, I'm like, that same collection that I spoke about that Mary kind of pulled on, that key collection. But this time it feels like he's kind of breaking out and doing his own thing. Yeah. It still has, you know, he's come from where he's come from, so you can't just cut those roots off. Lots of people were loving the jeans, the denim and stuff, but I really like the way that he's not just, it's really tricky to like take on a house like Courrèges or Paco Rabanne, which is so imbued in the 1960s, and not do like a retro take on that, which actually is kind of quite cool.
I think Courrèges really did that, and I kind of loved it anyway.
Like, because it's really cool right now.
I have so much time for retro futurism.
Oh no, so do I. I mean, I like, that's all I think about. But it's, in terms of what he did here, he brought in like zoot suit kind of like tailoring, so he had kind of different decades and a bit of sort of you know, the 70s and all kinds of, and it was really clever. Like Reba was saying, in terms of the research, I love it when I can see that people are like combining different decades and not doing things literally.
Definitely.
There were some great skirts that kind of like were like sort of duvets that sort of had braces. There was just some real nice space agey bits.
I just like feeling like when designers are actually interested in things, you know, when you go to a show and you're like, oh wow, Like, and we do see this in London, like with Ryan Lowe and Claire Barry and people like that, where you're like, this designer is obsessed with these things. And, like,
yes,
that's
but sometimes
so
it doesn't work.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I think that when you see the references, sometimes that means it's laboured.
Yeah.
I think I'd rather love something and then analyse it later.
Yeah. But that's what I kind of think with Paco Rabanne is you're not quite sure what but you feel like this has come from a lot of things that he's obviously deeply interested in, which is interesting.
But I think it's important of a fashion designer, you can tell they're interested in more than just fashion.
Yeah.
So important.
Yeah.
So important. And with some designers, like for example Saint Laurent, I feel like he doesn't have any interests outside of fashion. His interest in fashion is like this kind of this really perverse nostalgia, which is in my opinion irrelevant.
Yeah.
But like these little like motocross moon boots. Sorry, I've whizzed ahead.
Can we go back to
you know, I just think it's kind of interesting, like you said, that he did do deliberately like kind of retro things, but actually I think that a woman in New York could just combo them with something and there's an irreverence.
I think he's trying to remind the audience, you know, the roots of the house.
Yeah, and I think
also they've just opened a store which is very like the design of it is very kind of futuristic and kind of quite fabulous, and I feel like a lot
I love
of it
the ad
is,
campaign.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I'm intrigued by it, and it's nice to kind of
to bring a sporty edge to a house that was about. It's a bit like what Pucci have done. It's about performance, so they're like, oh god, I don't want to get stuck in the space age, or if you're Pucci, stuck in some kind of, you know, aviation world. So they try and then extend that out to the sports thing that's going on right now.
What else should we talk
Louis
about?
Vuitton.
Louis Vuitton. I'm conscious we haven't done Givenchy, we haven't done so many people, but I am also conscious of time. We've missed Junya. We didn't really talk about Comme.
I don't think that was Junya's strongest.
No, I wasn't mad on it. Yeah, let's talk about Vuitton. Did you like it? It was strange though in some way because
I loved the section where it was the fitted dresses over the longer dresses.
Yeah.
I thought that was so Nicolas Ghesquière and so Balenciaga. But a lot of the I didn't go to the show, but a lot of the press that I saw just after the show were going absolutely nuts.
Yeah, I had this real mix. Some people thought it was. I really liked it.
But I think it was a spectacle.
Some people thought it was a real mess. But I thought it was great.
I think it's a bit of a mess. I think a lot of it's really unflattering for women to wear. Actually. Yeah. I don't think it really suits women's bodies very well.
There's quite a lot going on. To be
it was
fair.
a real kind of luxury casual for Vuitton. It was kind of a new departure. But I think that they erected some. They had some kind of designed marquees outside the actual normal show space. So I think it was a really good sensory experience if you were there, because they were just going crazy about it.
Yeah. But you're not impressed, Reba?
I think it's all right. I don't really have much to say about it.
What are your thoughts, Lucy?
I've looked at it like 2 or 3 times, and it's weird. I haven't got a takeaway for it.
Yeah.
Haven't got a takeaway about it, which actually says that again, like Reba's sort of indicating that there's a lot going on. It's probably like 3 collections within this collection.
Yeah, it's a bit much.
There's so many pieces that if you were to like do an edit like Mandi was saying on the panel yesterday, almost needs like a buyer to go in there, or one of us, and just be like, okay, these are the pieces, because actually you could slice and dice this collection in 5 different ways and have a totally different collection.
I think that's the problem though with these houses, you know, like I think Chanel was 97 looks or something.
They're trying to
but you can't because of the depth of the business. They have to have those looks for the selling.
Because they're trying to cater to like a million different climates, a million different
and different countries buy it in
a
different way, and you know, there's that insecurity where the buyer will say, but it's got to be a runway look because the customer's coming to them and wanting the one on the runway. Whereas it's really funny because, you know, in the Comme des Garçons collection, sometimes you have pieces that weren't in the show. And I get excited about that.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my God, no one's seen
and
it.
And the Comme des Garçons collection, sometimes it's like 14 looks. When you're like, done.
It was,
I love that.
That's
I think
it
was. It was 13.
Was it 13?
We don't need to like...
Honestly,
mass produce for the sake of it.
Yeah,
it was just ideas, and like they just came down. It was great.
Can we talk about like that Comme des Garçons? Did you guys read that Elle on Earth piece?
Oh my God, that just took off yesterday, didn't it?
What's that?
Literally, I was Skyping my boyfriend and I had to like literally like pretend that like I was like doing something else so I could just like, I didn't want to hang up on him, but I was reading it.
I love that it gave an insight into what really goes on behind the scenes in fashion. So this
journalist got an interview with Rykiel and like, oh my God, I just like it's.
She's an alien.
And he was saying that Ray controls Adrian.
And then he slags up everyone. He talks about the process premise of Elle, like, he's obviously
So he
like
writes
deeply
for Elle?
unhinged.
Well, he
No,
hates
he was pitching it around, and he goes through everyone he pitched it to and was like, they're boring, they're shit. Like,
I
all of
couldn't
them said
believe that he
no.
offered it to Elle, actually. I thought
Yeah,
it was
it's
an
really,
interview
really
with
strange.
her.
So he had an interview,
He had the interview, he did the interview, and then
and then he pitched it to magazines afterwards.
no,
They wanted to have it in
he
two
had it
countries.
secured
The
that
Guardian
he
took
could do
it.
it.
The Guardian took it in the UK,
Yeah.
and then he was going to have it in another country as well. I don't know how that worked actually.
Yeah.
That was a bit weird
It
because
was a bit
one
weird.
must have mentioned the other.
The other, yeah.
And also, it was really weird that he could get a story and then pitch it out.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I would have thought
it was
that
weird, yeah.
someone like Comme des Garcons would almost like have a lifeline to their dream thing and say,
He must
"Hey,
have
we're
had some
thinking
link
it's time
there.
Yeah,
we
he
did an
must have done.
interview."
But it's in, and he just goes like he's obviously like absolutely feral. Like he goes
But
completely.
he was
So
really
what does he
clever.
say in it?
What's he saying in it?
He just slags off everyone at Elle. He kind of slags off Comme des
He's
Garçons.
talking about the
He's-
situation and the politics.
the
of how
politics of
happened.
it. So he talks about like the woman that he was assigned at Elle and writes like, you know, that she
Anna
like
Slowey.
ripped his piece to shreds, that she pretended to email him when she didn't, that she was cancelling meetings. Like he calls like every publication a complete bore. He slags off Anna Wintour for ages.
Who is he?
He's called, I've forgotten his name, which is really annoying. It's like, can you remind me of his name? It's like, I've literally been talking about him all day. He used to be a staff writer at Charlie Hebdo, so it's like kind of in weird, interesting background. But it's had really mixed reactions. Some people are like, this is fucking amazing. Loads of people are like, how not to be a journalist, like this, like.
But he's not
pumped up
necessarily a
writer.
fashion writer.
No.
I think that's great though.
No.
Why not?
No, but there was something really cool that he did when he met Ray. He asked her a question. What was the question he asked her? And she smiled.
Yeah.
And it was just genius.
Yeah,
Because no one gets anything out of her.
Yeah.
She's very limited in the
Yeah,
output
yeah.
she'll give. And it's almost like every few years she does do an interview, but it's the same thing, just
Yeah.
rearranged.
But how did he get this
But he
interview?
got
I
through.
don't know.
And it reminded me of when I took Charlie
I'm
Porter.
obsessed with
It reminded me of when I took Charlie Porter to interview Zaha Hadid for ID.
Yeah.
And Charlie did a very clever thing. He mentioned, what's it called? Is it that Australian comedy duo? He mentioned them straight away. I
Yeah.
said, have you seen it? Oh, it's great, I'll send you the DVD. And he broke the ice and he's completely in with us straight
that's
away.
clever. Yeah.
And this journalist, I thought he was so clever.
He was, yeah. What's his?
Jacques Hizaki?
Yeah, Jack Hizaki. But oh my god, it's amazing. I'm completely obsessed with it. It's just insane.
I
But you
should
guys
read it.
have to read it. Like.
But it's quite interesting because I put it on my Facebook page.
Did you?
And there was little discussions going on between people in the reactions to
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And Alex Fury was getting a bit.
Was he?
yeah.
What was he saying?
Well, just I'm not taking it seriously because he has spelling mistakes anyway, or something. But it was interesting seeing everyone have
go for
opinions on it.
My favourite thing is going back to the Paris Fashion Week collections. People keep putting on, like, just atting him on Twitter and putting pictures of that Vetements hoodie that say "May the bridges I burn light the way," which I thought was really funny. So, returning to Paris Fashion Week, was it a strong Fashion Week, or is it? I felt like it's very hard to come away from it being like, oh, those were great shows, because you just feel like the whole industry is in this.
I don't think there was
flux
anything that was
too.
outstanding.
No.
I don't think there's anything that had a particularly strong message. And I
But
felt
do you
like,
think that's just because it's not possible to have that at the moment?
oh, fuck it, you can do anything you want.
But it just feels like, but can you? That's the thing.
You know, I don't feel like there's very many people that have a voice in fashion anymore.
Yeah.
Imagine if McQueen was still in fashion right now.
Yeah.
Like, you know, it's,
But I don't even know. I think of that, and I think, you know,
maybe he wouldn't be.
maybe
but
like people who I think of are brilliant. They settle like, and also like it's so hard. Like I think one of the best designers is Hussein Shalayat, and he's amazing. But even like, it's so hard to do anything and to have a platform and to still get people to come and write about you. Like the industry.
yeah,
it's
but
just,
he's
like,
intelligent. He's not like down with the Instagram fodder. Like,
No,
he's,
exactly.
He is
Yeah,
who
but in
he
his
is.
day, that was the hot show
But
to
then
go
it
to
should
more
be
than
it
McQueen.
should be his day still.
Yeah,
but
no,
it's
he's
not
incredible.
because it's like people are like, well, he's not new anymore, so we're not going to write about him.
No,
And it's
but
like this-
I'm not sure that the collection is the same. I mean, they always say that it's about timing. Like, I've
Yeah.
never really enjoyed John Galliano at Margiela.
Yeah.
But this season, it looked right.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I'm not
yeah.
saying I loved it,
So it's
but
a
it
bit-
looked
it's
right. So
timing.
it's often about timing, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought the Miu Miu show was quite complete.
Yeah.
I thought it was the whole package,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
I thought that you went away with so much
So you
from
thought
that
it was
show.
there were shows that you thought tick boxes.
Yeah,
did
but
well.
but I'm not, as you say, it's not, oh my God, there were so many wow shows.
Yeah.
My favourite shows aren't wow shows.
Yeah, yeah.
When I think Loewe is beautiful. I think it's like beautiful, beautiful clothing. You know, and I love Margiela. I think it's ridiculous, and I think that's great that it's
Yeah.
ridiculous.
My
Yeah.
favourite
And I
show
think we
is
should
Margiela.
celebrate the
Yeah.
fact that it's like, it's just eccentric. It's completely eccentric, and it doesn't, you know, Galliano doesn't
Yeah.
care what people think. Well, I mean, maybe he does care, but, you know, he's creating a kind of vision of womanhood that I think is it's funny, you know, and I think we need a bit more of that. Like I think Saint Laurent and Vetements is like, it's too smug. Yeah. And I hate this smugness, and I think we need more things with a sense of humour.
We know that John loves fashion.
Yeah.
You know, so actually this is, I think it's great. I think I'm just going to end there.
We just need more lol. We need more fun.
But you know, it's just so
I want more
well done as well. It's not just like lol. It's really good fashion.
Well, it's wit, and it goes back to what I was saying, like sincerity, and it's just
sincerity is very important, and it's missing.
Absolutely.
But I think this idea of being cool for the sake of being cool is really horrible.
Yeah.
And really smarmy.
Yeah.
It's like soon to be very dated, you know. And I think people the designers who are really focusing on this concept of being cool, it's over already.
Yeah.
You know, you need to build on something much harder than that.
Well, it can't be cool unless the editors are touting it as that. You know, you can't just have a show and say,
but then
we're
I even
cool.
think things that editors are touting as cool, like as soon as I see loads of people wearing something, and I don't mean in that, I don't want to be like everyone else, but I then think of it as
I think the biggest victim of that is Gucci. I mean, the collection is not huge when you see the same people.
Yeah, all wearing the same
all
thing.
wearing the same
because
pieces.
It just feels like it's not authentic. Like people whose style I love are people where they always look different to everyone else, even if they're actually wearing something a lot of people have. They just look different.
That's individuality, right?
Yeah, and you just don't see that very much, and I feel like that's the problem with these brands that make key pieces, or like, you know, these statement pieces. I feel like
designers like Saint Laurent and Vetements, it's not about individuality.
Yeah,
it's funny because when you're talking about that, especially the Gucci, when you think about Alexa Chung going into Marks and Spencer's archive for her collection, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's such a thing at the moment. Like looking back, fake vintage, all of that.
Yeah, and it's it's like we said, it's just sort of like everyone's an individual, but if everybody looks the same, then no longer an individual.
Yeah.
It's a bit like when you go to Berlin and you see that everyone's cool, and you're like, if everyone's cool, how where's the cool?
It's not cool, though, is it?
It's not, is it? So it's just a uniform that people are kind of appropriating, and I think.
Also, I actually really like people who are like knowingly not cool.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
They don't try and be cool. They just like do their own stuff, and they're just like weird.
Yeah,
well,
like
that's idea of eccentricity again,
you
know.
Yeah.
And I think that needs to be brought back. Just an honesty. People being a bit more humble.
Yeah.
You know, I think, you know, this whole, you know, how people are consuming Instagram, there are so many trends that are emerging out of it, which we're then actually seeing on the catwalk as well, that people just need to take a step back and think about what actually makes them happy and how they actually want to present themselves a bit more.
Good advice.
I think also what we're talking about, when you think about some of the shows that we got excited about at London Fashion Week, and then we're talking about all these shows in Paris, I think there was a lot more authenticity in London.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, by miles.
So that's what we're saying. We're ending rather than with praise, with a little bit of guidance and advice on what we'd like to see more of. Should we give them a clap anyway? They're giving us stuff.
Yeah.